Hey folks, Jason Dukes, Dirt Race Life. We ran our Camaro for the first time this season, and there were more bugs and issues with the driver and his setup than there was with the car. We're going to walk through it, do the in-car cam footage, and do some analysis each step along the way. Hopefully I'm learning something from it and you can learn something from it. Stick around. So we weren't exactly sure which class, how the classes were going to make, because there's several tracks that are racing tonight in the local area. So I came here to support. This track is one of the closest ones to me. It's maybe an hour and a half from the house. And what we did is we brought two different sets of tires, two different sets of rims. We went up there to the sign-in, and what we found out is that there was a hobby class, and it already had plenty of cars, and that we would have ran our wider tires and rims on it. But the crate class didn't have but 3 or 4 cars. He wants a minimum of 6 to make full payout. So what we're doing is we're swapping the tires out, and we're going to run the car in the crate class tonight. Crate racing street stock. We're going to run it in that class. Before we get to the in-car footage, I want to cover real quick. We did have these asphalt pull-offs on 10-inch rims on the car. We set the car up in the shop, scaled it. Go back to my previous video. I'll link it below to look at that one. But I had these asphalt pull-offs on. We took it to the track with these. We switched it to H500s. Pretty big difference, pretty big footprint difference between these two. Car-wheel drive, significantly different between these two tires right here. So I went out for the practice laps. We took a couple of laps around the track, practice. The track still did have some loose material on it. It was not wet or have any slick spots or muddy spots in it. It just had some loose material. Went out there and made a couple laps. Here's the key thing to look for in the video. I perceived that the car was tight in. So in my mind at the time, I'm driving the car, and when I'm returning back to the pits, I'm thinking, hey, this car was tight in. I was braking and turning in, and the car wasn't wanting to turn in. And so I quickly related that to, okay, I went to the H500s. I didn't have as ideal of the stagger as I had planned in the shop. And on the back, I had went from like 2.5 inches of stagger up to like nearly 4 inches of stagger. And in the front, the 2 inches that I had lost. In between the two, what I had done is I had lowered the amount of left rear bite. That's left rear tire weighing more than the right rear. Well, by the stagger, the rollout size of the tires changing, it changed in the direction that math made the right front and the left rear be pressing less than the left front and the right rear were. And because of that, what I had done is I had went from that previously scaled in the shop, 127 pounds. I felt like that had gone down to maybe 90 or 100 pounds. And so in my mind, this is this formulation that I was making. I was thinking, you know, I've lost some of my left rear bite. This car's tight. But watch the in-car cam footage, because looking at the footage, I don't think it was. If you watch as I turn in, sometimes I'm turning short into the turn, and that's an error. That's an unforced error that I'm making there without realizing it, where I'm turning short. You know, I'm braking and I'm holding the wheel, but I'm not turning the steering wheel overly to the left. You know, I'm braking and the car is going forward. At most, the car is just not naturally braking to the left, which could be easily driven out of the car, especially if I had changed my line, you know, coming down the straightaway, run that car out to the wall, and then sweep across that turn instead of running the center of the track. You know, the worst line you can run is just to stay in the middle the whole way around it. And I feel like I made a rookie mistake with, you know, you got to get the cobwebs out of your head. I hadn't raced the car in several months. This is the first time I've had the car on the track, you know, this season, and also with several changes. So I just got out in the track. I ran the middle of the track, and right off the bat, I'm thinking the car's tight in. Watch the video. What do you think? After running those practice laps, I was looking for a way to create some additional left rear bite for the car. I knew I had a 27-inch on the left rear and a 27.5 on the left front. Stagger-wise, this 27-inch will only roll out about 84 inches, whereas this 27.5 is rolling out at around 87 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm speaking about the circumference around the tire when you measure it with a tape measure. And so by having this 27 on the left rear, it was much shorter, and I knew in my mind it was taking bite away from the car. I swapped these two tires out, putting a much taller tire now on the left rear than what I had. So I added bite in by doing that. Also, when I take this 27 and I went to this left front, putting a much shorter tire on the left front had that same effect again, because now I'm pressing down less left front to right rear, in effect also adding bite to my left rear tire. And so between these two things, I felt like I was putting the bite back that had been missing. Watching this clip coming up, it's obvious that the car is turning in better. And I did, in fact, get some additional bite, was helping that car to rotate into the turn when I would decelerate. But I made a tragic mistake because I took the stagger away from the car. And so I was on a track that the surface had become spongy, and it was, when I'd go through the middle of the turn, when you watch this, you'll see it. Listen for the engine, and you'll hear how the motor is really bogging when I'm in the middle of this turn and I'm having to stay throttled up. And so what was happening is if I hooked into the track heavy in the middle of the turn, I would get a throttle push out. That's because I didn't have stagger in the rear of the car, and when the rear end would hook in, it would immediately try to press me straight forward because those two back tires were the same size. Didn't do all that well. I ended up finishing like 4th. Basically was just keeping up. Could have done a lot better line as far as like picking the right line to run and the entry. In hindsight, looking at this film, I think that I probably should have moved up, gotten away from that soft bottom. I had some fear that I had a lot of loose material up top, and if I had gotten up top, I would have skated out. But really, it may have been that you'll get in this mode where you kind of follow the leader, and I just assumed the top was no good, but I didn't go up there and try it, and I didn't see other people going up there and trying it. So that may have been a missed opportunity on that heat race. Let's check it out. It'll be all right. Just don't let me forget. She'll need fuel. She'll need fuel for the feature. Holes out there earlier, but now that was just shakedown, Who knows?
Because I hope every class is run on it now, so.
It may be blowed off a lot now. Car's gonna drive completely different, but whatever. I wasn't terribly disappointed with the heat race at the time, how it turned out with me in 4th place. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, I'm tired, I'm pushing off a little bit, but this track is going to slick off. Let's leave the car alone. Ultimately, the only changes we made to the car, we added 1 more pound of air pressure to the right rear, and we took 1 pound away from the left rear. So just a slight decrease in the amount of left rear bite, very slight increase in stagger because of that would be about the only result that we did. And then we went to the feature. Now in this next clip of the feature, the track has slicked off. And it was a very uncomfortable track to drive on if you were down low. I made a lot of laps where I was down in the bottom, and what had been spongy had gotten hard and was rough. And so, when I would be down in the bottom, according to if I would make an error and turn in too short, the car would hook up in a rut, push out on me. I'd be on and off the throttle. Made it very difficult for me to handle, and a lot of unforced error on my part. There were a lot of laps where I was down too low. I shouldn't have been down there. I felt like that I was off pace up high, and I think I was running in my mind. I was running a little bit lower line, trying to get a car with maybe a little bit shorter gear and a little bit less motor, trying to keep up on the pace there. Or at least that's my rationalization for it at this point. If I went back and did it again, I'd hope I do better. But towards the end of the race, after getting beat up continuously running that rough bottom, I finally got up high, and towards the end, the H500s I've got on the car tire-wise, these tires are about 2 years old. But they started coming on finally. They still had some life left in them. And toward the end there, the car up in the smooth slick did start acting right. And as you watch this feature through, you'll see a lot of errors in the beginning of it. And just look for those. Look for where how I'm turning the steering wheel. There's times I'm on and off the gas. I'm entering in too short. So watch for those things because we can learn from them. But then look towards the end how that, finally I kind of say, okay, let me just get in line because, I'm losing position here. I'm not gaining any position, and at times I'm losing position. So I decided I needed to intentionally make sure I stayed on the high line. I got up in that smooth. My tires got warmed up finally. The car started turning through the turn, and you'll start seeing me those last several laps being able to apply the power smoothly through the turn, and I started really keeping up instead of the situation to where I would lose ground and then cut short, make a little ground up, or someone in front of me would make an error, and I would catch back up. Toward the end, I was truly what I would say running a correct lap time for the speed of the cars that were on the track. So overall, I think we finished 5th, and only about the last 4th of the race do I feel like that I was really running the car the way I needed to be running it. My overall thoughts on it, I should not have gotten rid of my stagger. Should have instead dialed in some weight to the left rear, additional weight to the left rear by either turning on my cups on the front or moving a shackle hole on the rear. And the big thing that I missed looking back over it, my mind just wasn't there, was on the shocks. I took additional shocks with me. I said it in the shop in a previous video. Get on a rough track, that 8 compression, 2 rebound shock that I got on my left rear, I cannot run that on a rough track. That track got rough. I knew after the heat race that it was rough and it was going to be rough. And I did not go back and review all of the possible changes to make, and identified that that hold up shock needed to come off. And if I had taken it off and put a 4 shock, just a neutral 4 or a neutral 5 shock on that left rear, that would have put me in a much better position to be able to hold my pace if I was running the low line or run the high line. Either one probably would have put me in a lot better spot to be able to take advantage of people's errors ahead of me by passing down low. I feel like I probably would have finished a lot better. This car was underpowered to that class. I'm stock location shocks. There's several things that hamper this car. You know, so for example, it was running a full 3-speed transmission, a full clutch, vacuum cam style motor with all stock, you know, on the heads and everything, rocker arms, the whole 9 yards. And so that is a limitation. But when you watch the footage and you watch as far as the speed coming off the corner, this car could have been competitive to win in that race. It was just unforced errors that I was making, and errors I was making in the changes at the track on the decisions that I made. And so that brings up a good point. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, for sure. And I know all these things, and I know my car, but remembering and knowing to do them at the track in that moment, that's a different thing. I carry my books with me, and I know, go to the book, go down my sheets, look at all of my potential changes to make a choice. And right off the bat, the first race of this season, and I did not follow my own advice. And it's that easy to do. You get so busy and so wrapped up in what's going on, and I call it, you get those blinders on, you know, you got tunnel vision. When I left the track that night, I did not understand yet the errors I had made. In my mind, I was thinking the track was really rough, and you know, I had did the best I could in a class where I was a little bit outclassed, but you know, that's okay. In reality, after getting to watch the footage and really think through what was going on, I saw every error that I had made that was holding me back in that race. And so this is the first time that I've ever run in-car camera like that, and that forces me to have to be honest with myself. And so my advice to you is, you know, be willing to be really honest with yourself about this. So what I'm hoping is that, you know, I grow from it, and now that I saw that in-car camera footage, that's going to help drive me to slow down at my next race, really think through, get the book out, go through the list, make sure I'm making the right choice. But if you take something from this video and it helps you, I'm still winning. So there's that. If you like this type of video and what this is, for me, I really enjoyed this process. So I hope that this works. Leave me a comment, let me know. Hit the like button and subscribe. Help us grow this channel. Thank you.